Namaskar. This series comes to an end with this session. Before I conclude, let us try to understand what the laws of karma and the concept of rebirth are. In the last session, we learned what is a soul, what is the mind, intellect, and ego in the context of 36 principles of Tantra. It is essential to know what the laws of karma and rebirth are for the expansion of our consciousness, because the development of consciousness will be an obstacle race if we don't. There are many barriers to the development of consciousness. One of the most important of those barriers is the operations of karma and rebirth. Therefore, it is very important to understand how these laws operate so that we can smartly stay away from the course of its action. If we pay close attention to our own lives and the lives of those around us, we may come across certain facts that may seem conflicting. Many people suffer in life in a variety of ways, such as illness, poverty, violence, strife, broken relationships, etc. Many others can be seen going through life more or less effortlessly. Many who live as heretics and transgressors are found to be living in a material prosperity, while many others, hardworking, honest, and righteous people, fail in life to make both ends meet. Haven't we often wondered, why do I suffer like this? Haven't we read that even many great people who have grown so much spiritually, even healed others, have themselves become dangerously sick? These observations cannot be explained away with common sense. There is an important aspect that we need to understand about the law of karma. Shastra says that the life experience of each of us is shaped by the laws of individual karma and the laws of the collective social karma. That is, the laws of karma operate not only at personal levels but also collectively at the family, community, nation, and global levels too. It therefore means that the shackles of collective karma gathered collectively will affect each individual of that group. Proper understanding of what the laws of karma are and how they work is essential to reduce the severity of our life experiences and to prevent fresh violations of the law of karma occurring in our lives. What is karma? Before moving on to the laws of karma, we must first understand some of the key definitions. The Sanskrit word karma means action or deed. All our actions, except what we are doing right now, fall under the definition of karma. The work that is being done right now is kriya. It is not karma. The seeds of karma are contained in kriya, because when our kriyas are done, they immediately become karma. When the deed is done, there is no longer any external gross form for the work we have done. The result of the kriya done, that is the action completed, will appear immediately or much later. It will come for sure. This is the natural law of karma. Do you remember what we said in the last session when we talked about the mind? That the action we do and the resultant emotional impact it gives on our mind are both stored as tanmatras or molecules on the surface of our mind. Karma is the information held in this subtle record called karmic memories. To use a metaphor from the modern world, it is like saving data on a computer's hard disk. Just as the information about a giant peepal tree is stored inside its tiny seed, karma and its consequences follow us in the form of memories stored in the astral body. The seed holds all the information about how the forthcoming tree will be. When a hen lays an egg, only another hen will come out of it. The information on the color, the shape, the form, the sound of that chicken is all stored inside that egg. Likewise, through nature's own information technology management system, our karma is recorded and the key effects follow us birth after birth unfailingly. It is therefore extremely important for us to understand what karma is, what karmic laws are, and how they operate, so that we can conduct our lives in such a way that we can mitigate the effects of activated karmas, and also we can totally prevent fresh karmas from being formed. Published in 2008, The Biology of Belief is a book written by Dr. Bruce Lipton. This book describes in detail how cells in our body receive and process information. The implications of Dr. Lipton's research is that it radically changes our general perception of life. Dr. Bruce Lipton shows that genes and DNA do not regulate our biology. Instead, he proves that DNA is controlled by the signals received from outside the cell, including positive messages emanating from our positive and negative thoughts. For decades, the scientific community believed that our genes are fixed, unchanging, and beyond our conscious control. However, Dr. Lipton posits that all that the DNA does is to switch on or off depending on the commands of signals received. Many disease conditions are in fact karmic in origin. Dr. Bruce Lipton's book gives ample evidence to debate that karmic energies are indeed part of the environment that he talks of triggering the DNA to on-off positions. Karma can be both positive and negative for us. That is, certain deeds may bring prosperity and happiness for us. Certain other deeds can bring forth depression and pain. The most important law of karma is you reap what you sow. We can see that a similar concept exists in all countries and populations around the world. Almost everyone in the world believes that good deeds have good results and bad deeds have bad results. The general belief universally is that good deeds purify the soul and bad deeds pollute the soul. This universal understanding too is a tacit validity for the laws of karma. Let us see how karma is formed. Whatever we do, whether it is with our thoughts, with our body, or using our words, it makes a very fine impression on the surface of our mind. We said in the last session that in Advaita, the storehouse of memory is called the Chitta, and in Western psychology, it is called the subconscious mind. When we repeat the same action over and over again, these impressions become stronger and stronger. When you write the same letter over and over again on a white paper, those letters become more and more pronounced, isn't it? This auto recording of our repeated actions is one of the inevitable laws of karma. These impressions become more and more powerful with each repetition. The dynamics of these energetic impressions bring us to a state where we are compelled to do the same action without the consent or even knowledge of our conscious mind. These imprints are called samskaras in Sanskrit. In other words, samskara imprints are created by our repeated passionate actions, and then these subtle karmic imprints compel us for these actions again. This is a vicious circle. Repeated actions create imprints again, and imprints result in more actions again. Another important law of karma is the inevitability of this vicious circle. There are many examples of such automated compelling actions in our everyday life. Think of compulsive actions like alcoholism, smoking, habitual lying, late sleeping, waking up late, argumentativeness, sexual misconducts, short-temperedness, etc. One becomes completely addicted to repeated actions. These addictions can be seen to take place not only in the case of negative activities but also in the case of positive actions too. Examples are punctuality, friendly disposition, the habit of account keeping, physical mannerisms, strict adherence to certain types of diet, etc. It is because of these repeated actions and the resultant encoding of memories in the astral body that good habits as well as bad habits are formed. How do we learn a poem by heart? We do it by repeating itself, isn't it? According to Tantric understanding, it is the intensity of our karmic baggage that decides our birth, parentage, family, work, living conditions, life experiences, health status, and even the way we die. Accordingly, the intensity of those experiences increases or decreases depending on the karma we got activated. The more we understand these inevitable aspects of our life, the more we realize that life is far too significant and purposeful than it seems from the surface. Each of us has been born, gone through varied life experiences, and died hundreds of times before. In every birth, we have created karma by our thoughts, words, and deeds, all of which operate unfailingly in lines with the dictates of the law of karma, whether we know it or not, whether we accept it or not, or understand it or not. Those karmas put us in the incessant wheel of birth, experiences, and death. This is, in short, the law of karma. There are three types of karmas. The first type of karma is the sanchita karma or accumulated karma. Accumulated karma is the seeds of karma that we have created and stored for birth after birth. They are seeds that have not germinated yet and they are waiting to germinate in the future. In Shastras, the sanchita karmas are often compared to arrows retained in the sheath. The second type of karma is the prarabdha karma. Prarabdha karma is the experience of being born, undergoing experiences, and then dying. These are karmas already activated. The seeds of karma have germinated. The karmic arrows are shot. The arrow is already in the flight. It cannot be taken back. It must end with experiences. That is the prarabdha karma. The third type of karma is called kriyamana karma. Kriyamana karma is the thoughts, words, and deeds that have every possibility of becoming a fresh karmic bag. That is, that one action, that is kriya, which has not yet become a seed. If the deed is not done carefully, it will be the seed of another new karma. Using the metaphor of Shastra, we have not yet manufactured a new karmic arrow, but all the raw materials required for the making of the arrow are ready. A new karmic arrow may or may not be manufactured. That is, if we learn how new karmas are created and if we learn to deal with our life experiences with dexterity in such a way that new karmas are not created in the process of doing a new kriya, then kriyamana karma will not be formed. If we live and carry out actions unconsciously without much attention and care, then every action of ours will become a new karma. In other words, it becomes a new arrow and goes into the sheath and becomes a sanchita karma. There is something called cause and effect in the nature of things. The law of causation in science is similar to the Newton's third law of motion in the physical world. Without a cause, there can be no effect. The effect will hold all the characteristics of the cause. That is the foundation of the law of karma. Prakriti is a Sanskrit word that means the totality of the manifested visible universe. There is another world that is not visible. We did talk about this in the last session, that our visible physical body has an invisible astral body upon which the physical body exists. Likewise, there is a subtle invisible world that cannot be seen with our eyes, but forms the basis of the visible universe. The subject matter of our science on earth is concerned only with the laws of the physical matter of this visible world that we can see, touch, or feel. Similarly, there are laws that operate in the invisible microcosmic world. The laws of karma are one of them. To understand the difference between the laws of this micro and macro worlds, all that we need to do is to study the difference between the laws of Newtonian physics and the laws of quantum physics. Ignorance of the law is not accepted as an excuse in any law of the land, and so is with the law of nature too. That means you can't say, I did not know the law of karma, I'm sorry. That is, we must undergo and exhaust the already activated prarabdha karmas. This is not our fault, but this is our responsibility to correct that mistake. When we go through life, we must undergo all the experiences given by the already activated karma without creating any fresh karma to sprout. That is our responsibility. In other words, if we want to expand our consciousness, we should take care not to fall into the abyss of new karma. In order to do this, we need to have knowledge of the law of karma, then we need to have the willpower to do it, and then we should actually do it strictly in accordance with the law. Until we do this totally at all times while living here, we will have to return to life on earth again and again and again, experience the baggage of karma and then die again. This can be even worse if ignorance persists on each arrival. Things can get better when we start living with wisdom, with willpower, and with the ability to act in tandem. It is like playing the snake and ladder game. We can fall back into the numero uno at any time and then start the game all over again from the beginning. Knowledge, attention, devotion, consistent pious actions are necessary for the successful completion of our earthly assignment. Come to think of it, life is a fun game, but we just have to have that great insight to play smart. How to live without karma bondage and how to remain unaffected with it is a huge topic. Let me summarize just a few important tips that will help us to move in that direction. When we do not yet realize that we are consciousness, our body, mind, intellect, ego becomes the primary focus of awareness and we become identified with our body and mind. This is not a small problem. Once we understand this problem, the first step is to develop the correct understanding that we are consciousness and develop a habit of always watching our thoughts as a witness. In doing so, consciousness becomes separate from the mind and the contents of the mind. If we make a habit of it, we will gradually become accustomed to being the consciousness, the watcher of the thoughts, the seer of the sights, the hearer of the sounds, the feeler of touch, etc. In this context, I would strongly suggest that everyone read Eckhart Tolle's world-famous book, The Power of Now. It is not enough to just read it, but study it. The book contains several practical suggestions for returning to a state of awareness and expanding it further. We need to bear in mind that we are consciousness and that consciousness is the reflection of our supreme universal consciousness. We are therefore the children of that supreme consciousness and the power of that supreme consciousness. We should start developing an individual level of fatherly relationship with that supreme consciousness. At the same time, we should also cultivate a motherly relationship with Shakti, which is the power of that supreme consciousness. We must nourish this individual inner relationship with our spiritual father and spiritual mother. We should pay special attention to two things in our everyday life. The first thing is to make sure that our interaction with everything else around us is based on 5 fundamental principles. 1. The relationship with everything else should be based on non-violence. 2. It should be based on truthfulness. 3. We should not take anything that is rightfully others. 4. We should make sure that we use all our resources only for its moral and ethical applications. 5. We should refrain ourselves from accumulating material possessions. These are the 5 cardinal principles for our interactions with the world. These 5 principles must be observed at all times in our thoughts, words, and deeds. Secondly, our relationship with ourselves must be based on another set of 5 fundamental principles. These are those 5 fundamental principles. 1. We need to observe purity of mind, word, and deed by keeping our right thoughts, by keeping only right thoughts, right words, and right deeds. 2. We should try and retain cheerfulness at all times, no matter what the outer circumstances are. 3. We should strive to acquire both material knowledge and spiritual knowledge through our own self-efforts. 4. We should try and develop a certain mastery of mind and remain internally focused. 5. We must keep trying to find the eternal presence of that ultimate consciousness in everything. Together, these are the 10 principles that should govern our interactions with the world and with ourselves. In reality, moksha or freedom is the liberation from the effects of karma. That is, whatever we do or whatever experiences we undergo, we should develop the ability to live in such a way that no fresh karmas are formed. Such liberation comes only when our prarabdha karmas are completely burned in the fire of moral and ethical life. Even while we are actually undergoing the prarabdha karmas. Prarabdha karmas are arrows already shot and it cannot be called back. They have to be endured with forbearance. Moral and ethical life is living in accordance with the 10 principles described a minute earlier. Similarly, good karmas and auspicious deeds can bring forth prosperity and wealth. We should not lose balance then. That is, we must be equipoised both in happiness and in sorrow. We must be balanced in fame and shame. It is not enough to pretend to be equipoised or balanced. We need to be really so. Whatever you do with the intense emotion of any sort, it will potentially create a new karma. Good deeds are the positive deeds done with the equipoised and moral mind. That in turn leads to better life experiences, which sometimes will happen only in the next life. When the next life is lived with good experiences, there is a possibility that we may forget the lessons learned and forgetfully commit negative acts. Hence, rebirth can be a double-edged sword. In short, it does not matter what we do, all actions create appropriate reactions. At all times, we need to live as same samadukha sukhatshami, equipoised in happiness and in sorrow. No matter what our life experiences are, may this state happen to all of you. Let me end this session by sharing one more important information about reincarnation. Reincarnation is facilitated for a good reason. It gives an opportunity for the soul to work out our sanjita karma and get liberated from its clutches. But who is actually getting reborn? To understand this, we can take the illustration of one single moon reflecting on 100 pots of water in the moonlight that I mentioned in the previous session. There are three elements here: the soul, the astral body, the gross physical body. But there is only one moon. That is the supreme universal Shiva state of consciousness. The water in the pot is our subtle astral body. The astral body is made up of the mind, intellect, ego, and the tanmatras or molecules of smell, taste, form, touch, and sound. Our gross physical body is made up of Panjabhutas, consisting of blood, bone marrow, flesh, semen, fat, and fluids. What is the soul? The soul is the moon reflected in the water, which represents the subtle astral body in this example. The gross body is the pot. Death is the breaking of the pot. When the pot breaks, the water just flows out of the pot. Nothing else happens to the water. Nothing else will happen to the soul either, which is the reflection of the moon. The quality of the water in the pot will remain the same as it was before the pot was broken. The water that flows out finds another suitable pot in course of time and flows into it. From this, it is clear that it is the subtle astral body that is being born. Nothing ever happens to the soul. The quality of the water in the pot does not affect the soul. As I said, this series ends with this session. Everyone in this world is at different stages of development of their consciousness. Some are at entry level, while others are at the advanced level. Tantra provides an appropriate plan of action to develop each of their consciousness from their respective levels, regardless of what the level is. Tantra is in fact a complete self-help manual for the entire humanity. Tantra predates the Vedic period. All Indian Shastras are indebted to Tantra. Tantra is not written by anyone. Tantra is the inner science and technology for the upkeep and maintenance of humanity. It is the knowledge that downloaded from the highest state of Shiva consciousness to the higher consciousness of yogis below at a prehistoric time. That is the depth and breadth of Tantra Shastra. Hope and pray that all of you will be able to successfully outlive all the pain and pleasures of your varied life experiences and expand your consciousness as taught in Tantra. May that happen to all of you. Thank you and goodbye.